Hey guys, it's Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and this is our first episode of AGF Stitched with Kimberly. Today we're working on the Birchen quilt. It was designed by Art Gallery Fabrics using their Hello Bear collection by Bonnie Christine. Art Gallery fabrics are very versatile. They work well in trendy crib quilts all the way up to modern and sophisticated quilts like the one we're working on today. Now I know when you're looking at this quilt, you might think it's advanced and complicated, but I've made this easy so even a beginner can sew it. I've taken out a majority of the bias seams. We're going to be trimming down the block to get a perfect point, and there's no complicated tools today. Go to the Fat Quarter Shop, go to our free pattern page, and download the Birchen pattern. Cut your pieces, label them with your alphabetties, and let me show you some new techniques today. First, we're going to make our half square triangles. You will need a triangles on a roll pack that's 2.5 inches finished. You're going to cut 14 sections that are 2 by 6, so you have a total of 12 squares on each section. For your Birchen block 1, you're going to take your white background fabric and your navy fabric, put the fabrics right sides together, put one triangle paper section on top, pin. Then you're going to sew with a really small 1.6 stitch length. So I stitched in black thread so you could see my stitches, but at home I would use Aurifil color 2600, and I've included a free Aurifil 2600 spool in all of my Birchen quilt kits because I know once you try the Aurifil thread you're going to love it. And I also think you're going to really love working with this Art Gallery fabric because it has a really nice soft and smooth finish. Once you've sewn on your dotted lines, cut along your solid lines, and that's going to give you perfect half square triangles. So now we're going to remove our half square triangle paper, and then we're going to press our seams open. On this quilt, we're going to press all of our seams open, and the reason we're doing that is because there's so many seams, it can get bulky, but we're going to be using a slightly smaller stitch length throughout, so your seams won't pull apart. And we're just going to press these seams open. I use lots of steam, and I usually press from the back and from the front just to get it really nice and flat. Then you're going to want to cut off all your little dog ears, and you're going to make 160 white navy half square triangles. So this part looks a little bit tricky, but it's not bad at all. Take your half square triangles and lay them out according to your pattern and just go really slow. Then we're going to add 3 by 4 inch rectangles to each end, and we're going to add a 4 by 6 inch rectangle to the top. Then we're going to sew each row together. To sew them together, first you're going to find your center seam. Put the fabrics right sides together, and I'm going to give you some pinning tips. You're going to take your pin, stick it in the very point of your half square triangle. Then you're going to find the next half square triangle and pin it in that point. You're going to set your pin straight, push it down, make sure it's perfectly flat, remove the pin, and pin it back together. Then when you sew it together, we're going to use a 1.8 stitch length, and you don't remove your pin until you get your needle right before it. We're going to pin the entire thing just like this, and then we're going to press our seams open after we stitch. And your stitches are going to look really nice and flat just like this. So once you sew your rows together, this is how your unit is going to look, and we're going to make 8 units. Now we're going to bring in another beautiful colorway, and we're going to bring in this beautiful coral color. We're going to sew 2 strips that are 4 inches wide and 1 strip that's 2 3/4 inch wide. We're going to press our seams open, and we're going to make 6 units. Now we're going to subcut our triangles, and what I love about this is you can just use a Creative Grids ruler that most of us have at home. I'm using the 8.5 by 24.5 because it's really nice and long and works well for this. What we're going to do is look for the 45-degree angle on the ruler. We're going to line up the 45-degree angled line on the top seam. We're going to make sure it just overhangs right at the point, and we're going to trim our first cut. Now we're going to flip and keep cutting. And we're going to put it right at the tip of where you cut before, and we're going to cut. And we're going to keep doing that throughout, and you'll get 3 triangles per strip, and you need a total of 16 triangles. So now we're going to sew 2 of the triangles we just made right sides together. I'm going to pin in these intersections so that you get a really nice intersection. And then I'm going to use about 6 pins throughout since we're working on a bias seam and it will not move as much and you'll get a better result. And then of course I'm going to press open. We're going to make 8 of these units. So we're going to take the 2 units, we're going to put them right sides together, first matching the center. So we're going to match the center, pin in place, and then we're going to pin to the edge, and then we're going to pin to the other edge. So now we're going to sew, and this is our biggest bias edge that we have in the quilt, so I've got some tips for you. I actually learned this from Adita of Laundry Basket Quilts. What we're going to do is we're going to start in the center and sew to the edge, and then we're going to come back and sew from the center to the other edge. We'll start slightly before our seam each time. We're going to take our Creative Grids ruler that we used before, and on one side there's a really nice dotted line. You're going to put that a 1/4 inch away from all of your half square triangle points, and at the top we're going to draw a line. Now you might think, what is she doing? But it's all going to make sense in a minute. Then you're going to turn it, put the 1/4 inch ruler again, then you're going to draw a line. Now what this does is it creates an intersection for you. You're going to pin it in the center of your intersection and then pin in the center of your triangle unit where you've got this seam. And when you do that, that's going to create, when we cut this block, you're going to have a nice point, and when you cut your triangle, it's going to be right in the center of your point. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this really nice and flat, right sides together, and I'm going to pin throughout before we cut. So line your ruler up the same way and use the lines that you made with your pin as a guide and cut 1/4 inch away from your points. So now, because we pinned a lot, you've got bias edges that we're working with on the coral, but since we pinned, you're going to have no issues. We're going to do the same thing again, using this as a guide. And now, using fabrics that are just as beautiful as our first colorway, we're going to make our Birchen block 2s. We're going to alternate the location of the light and the darks, and then we're going to have a square that's 19¼ inches square. We're going to cut it on the diagonal once, match the centers, assemble it to your half square triangle, trim it just like we did before, and we're going to make 8 Birchen block 2s. And now we're ready to assemble our quilt. Assemble your blocks into rows, press them open, then assemble your rows together, press open, and we're all done. Thanks for watching our first episode of AGF Stitched with Kimberly. If you liked this video, show me some love in the comments below, and I'll see you on our second episode.